about live. Yeah, it should be live now.
Sure.
So, good morning, everyone. Brent Simon here, and I'm talking to Jesse Bless this morning. Hopefully, some of you will have had the advance notice of this and will be joining us to ask some questions. Let me just introduce Jesse. For those of you that don't particularly know Jesse, haven't perhaps heard the name. So Jesse, on his About page, has got a very good-looking picture of himself, obviously. As Jesse mentions in his About page here, he used to be with AILA. AILA is the American Institute, I think it is, of Immigration Lawyers Association, rather.
Yeah.
And you were the federal litigation director, which meant presumably you were constantly suing the government or helping other lawyers sue the government. Is that what that role?
Yeah. I came in 2019, and we had an administration that was passing a lot of bad policy as far as we were concerned. And my job was to rally the troops and take action, and we were successful. So
you were right there in the heart of the Trump administration times and all of that. So we should talk about that in a few moments, and
sure.
Just in case that's a possibility of that happening again. So fast forward to today, you run your own immigration firm, and I'm sure you're available for consultations. And you and I have known each other now for probably 4 years or so. I should have checked that, but I very much appreciate your guidance and counsel over the last 4 years. I appreciate everything you've done for literally thousands of people. I did want to just sort of cover, because I know some people will ask about the Gomez lawsuit, Jesse. I have a perspective about the impacts that caused at the time, and it's it's possible that people will focus on the eventual loss of the appeal. But how did you see the whole process? What did you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably saved in that 2020 year, however many visas were issued. I think what was the final number? Do we know?
So the up until September 4th, visa issuance was blocked, essentially.
Yeah.
At that point, before September 4th, there had been 12,000 visas issued on SEAC, through consular processing. I don't know the AOS number. Between September 4th and September 30th, they issued another 6,000 visas that we can see on SEAC, and probably some more adjustment of status. So there were at least 6,000 visas, but there's been other impacts ongoing as well, which I can sort of explain my perspective on.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it was a difficult case when, you're asking a federal judge to step in and order the president / Department of State to do something that they were refusing to do. They were blaming COVID, which was BS. There was a ban on entry, and we were able to convince a judge, and there were other cases too, that if you ban entry, that doesn't mean you ban visa issuance. So visa issuance and entry are different. And we saved a lot of visas through pro bono, really free legal services, and we had tremendous partners. And we won before the district court judge multiple times. In hindsight, I think Judge Mehta and the legal team, made a assumption. I mean, we didn't ask him to do this, but I think Judge Mehta, if we gave him truth serum, would say, had I known that I couldn't preserve visas past the deadline, I would have ordered them to issue 17,000, which is what he really wanted for that year, prior to that deadline. The way it's bittersweet, because ultimately we lost on a very narrow issue. We didn't lose on the merits. We didn't lose because we won the issue of, can you shut the program down? The answer is no. Right. Can a judge give us half the relief before the September 30th deadline and preserve it for after. We lost on that issue, which is a difficult issue. And, I thought the argument, which I argued for Gomez in the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, I thought Katsas was going to be the swing vote. I never thought the chief judge would side with him if it didn't go our way. But ultimately, my takeaway from the decision, and this is not about how I feel about the harm and the injury to those who unfortunately are not going to get their visas. My thought going forward is it's a great case if they come in, if they being a government, and tries to shut down the program. Now we know we have to get everything prior to September 30th. We can't wait, right? And the judge can't wait.
Right.
So lesson learned, and it's not going to help those that suffered. And I feel like I failed, and I did, and I'm accountable to that. But, next time we're going to have to know that the deadline is the deadline, and we have to get everything prior to that deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, time was against us. Frankly, the whole thing was amazing. How that case, because I think you and I started sort of putting together contact lists. I don't know, maybe it was May, something around about that. It wasn't a long time from a lawsuit point of view. It wasn't a long time to go from that on such a massive pro bono case, huge case with thousands of people involved. It was amazing.
It was, we got a class certified, which is not easy to do, meaning we represented the entire 2020 class of those who had not been interviewed prior to a certain date, and there was Chuck Cook and Greg Siskin and Jeff Joseph and Aaron Hall and Curtis and Morrison and Rafa. They all, they represented private individuals, and we were all pushing forward. And for 2021, we had to keep pushing because they were still blaming COVID. So I don't, we don't get to control the outcome as lawyers in federal court, unfortunately. I think a lot of people did heroic work on a program that for those years was not being treated with respect. And I think it influenced the over granting of visas in subsequent years. I mean, the State Department definitely got the message. And
exactly.
For these
I'm
last,
glad you raised that.
The last 3 years, we've had a lot of success at making sure that they use all the allocated visas. I mean, doesn't mean that it's being used in the right places, because I know that for some embassies, but no, I mean, everyone deserves a measure of credit for telling this administration, the Biden administration, who was kind of asleep at the switch for a little bit, to just like, hey, this was actually an issue you ran on, and you wanted to actually increase the number, but you have to at least use the number, and they did, and they deserve credit for that.
Yeah, you're right to bring that up. That was going to be a perspective I wanted to share also. That I've been watching DV, the DV process since 2013, advising people since 2013, and but I've also studied the data in the previous sort of 10 years prior to that. And with the exception of 1 year, up until DV 2022, they just didn't go close to the limit, the 55,000. They didn't get there. They didn't try and get there. They were amazingly satisfied with mediocre performance. After the lawsuits of DV 2020 and 2021, as you say, they took it more seriously. I think it adjusted their position. They didn't want to continue to get sued. And so now we see in DV 2022, they exceeded the cap. In DV 2023, they exceeded the cap again. They cause themselves their own problems with that, but nevertheless, it's a stark difference from where they were before, where they didn't give a damn about the numbers. We still have this problem, like we talked of, before. I mean, it's only a couple of years ago, two and a half years ago or so, we were talking about Nairobi, and you were making the point, we're going to have to try and sue Nairobi and everything else. Nairobi turned around to become, the world's best embassy in DV 2024. They were amazing. And so, embassies can switch around, but obviously the threat of litigation, not that we can do very much against embassies, but the threat of litigation keeps the government on its feet, on its toes, as it were, and make sure they do the right thing. So is going to have, those lawsuits have not an ongoing impact for years to come, I'm sure. Talking about the Trump administration, if we have another one of those, like the election is going to be what, November the 5th, is less than a month away. Just to explain to people outside the States how that would work. If Trump is elected, and it's roughly 50-50 right now, as I see it, is roughly 50-50. It could go either way, right? So if Harris gets in, that's one thing. Not that the Biden-Harris administration has been good for immigration, but the Trump administration would generally be recognized as worse for immigration in terms of people trying to emigrate to the USA. So if Trump gets in on November 5th, he could be elected November 5th, 6th, 7th. It'll be around about that time when we know. But he won't actually become president until January the 20th. So from that point, though, Jesse, what do you feel would happen under a Trump administration?
I mean, he's going to impose entry bans like he did, and he's going to be smarter about them. If you remember back, we had what they called the Muslim ban to start, which was
3 bans.
Yeah, and then there was the IV ban and the NIV ban. It was under the kind of cloak of COVID, but through litigation, I mean, I think that his new team will have learned how to go about issuing an entry ban. And in fact, Biden has issued one on the border with asylee applicants. And so so he's going to try to shut down the program. Now, the card we can play is, okay, well, consulates and embassies still have to do their job. And then we could use the Goodluck Gomez case to say, and we need everything done if a court's going to grant us relief. We don't have anything after the deadline. And so you're going to have to order the State Department to issue these visas for, prior to September 30th. I mean, again, visas are only going to be issued for 6 months at a time. So if the entry bans are not taken back, how do we make sure those visas are actually able to be used?
Right.
I think the plan for a new change in administration will be to create chaos so that nothing works, right?
Right.
The immigration system has to come to a halt because they want to turn the ship around.
Yeah.
And literally bring it, deport people. I don't think they fully, not that I don't think, I know they don't understand how the process works, right. But for programs that have a time sensitivity to it, which diversity visa program absolutely is the best example of that. It's not, I don't know if it's me. But there will be a need for litigation to preserve the diversity visa program for 2025. They'll have to be, because they will shut it down. That leads me to maybe my first recommendation, which would be, if you have the ability to come in and adjust status in the United States based on a selection notice for this year, I would absolutely do that, because they can't really stop that. That should be your best bet.
Right.
So
adjustment of status
on the fence,
big deal.
Yeah. Or if we see something in November and you hold an ability, or you're in the United States, or you're thinking about, or you have the ability to come to the United States and adjust status on a DV 2025 selection notice, I would highly recommend you do that.
Yeah. There's a couple of tricky bits about that, as far as I can see, and as far as I'd advised people for years. The first thing is, if people don't already have a visa, a non-immigrant visa, then they could apply for that. Even in the time period between November and January, for example, they could apply for that. But there could easily be restrictions placed on NIVs as well, right? Yeah. After January the 20th. So people need to be paying very close attention between November and January if Trump is the winner. And so firstly, can people apply for a non-immigrant visa when they have already filed, presumably, their DS-260 application for an immigration visa.
Yeah,
How much more difficult is an NIV petition in that?
Yeah. So if you're going for like a B1, B2 visitor visa, you have to have non-immigrant intent to get the visa. You have to show that you come back, and that you're going to visit for a specific purpose, business meeting, or specific purpose. I think if you have, and again, the other thing is this: where are we in the world? Because every embassy and consulate have their own idea about the standard of non-immigrant intent.
Right.
And they can easily, what they do is they issue a 214B denial. 214B is just a code in the statute that says, I don't think you're going to maintain status, meaning I don't think you're going to come back, or I don't think you're just going for a visit. So I think it's very difficult if you don't already possess a visa to get one after the filing of a DS-260. It's going to pop up right on the screen, like they're going to question you. But
anything about enhancing the normal story with any non-immigrant visa is, you have to prove ties to your home country, reasons for you to return. People can try and enhance, not enhance in any dishonest way, but make sure they're fully prepared to show the ties they have, to show that they will abide by the rule.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, again, one of the good things is having a catalyst. My family's coming in for the Christmas holiday or Hanukkah to celebrate with. We haven't been. I don't know where this DV program is going to go. I think that's another part of it. Is just because you file a DS-260, the State Department will tell us that doesn't mean anything. So why can't we say that, right?
Right.
They told us it doesn't mean anything, so I want to preserve my ability to visit my aunt, my son. The other thing too is if you have the ability to maybe get an F1 student visa, you still have to have that intent, but it's a little bit more flexible with a student visa. And if you're coming in for maybe a spring semester or whatever, I would pursue that option to have it as an alternative. Some people are eligible for an L1 executive or manager visa.
Right.
You can actually have dual intent. You can say, yeah, I'm going in. I'm an executive at so-and-so. And if I get the chance, I'll adjust status because I can do that. So every case is a little bit different, but if you're applying for a visitor visa, I can't tell you that a consular officer is going to understand the law because oftentimes they don't. But there are things you can say so that have a catalyst, show the ties to your country. Like I own a house here. So even if I get, and you can always remind them, I can come back for a consular interview. I haven't paid the fee to adjust status yet, of course.
Right.
They take $330 from you, for you and every applicant with you.
Right.
Maybe you were going for a B1, B2, but your spouse and children are not. That's another good reason for them to credit your application.
Yeah. And in fact, that would be a wise way to split the application. So don't take the whole family with you because you've then, obviously pulled your whole life apart.
Yeah.
But what the principal applicant can go, the principal applicant of the DV case can go to the States if they can get permission. They can be there. And if necessary, they can come back and do consular processing, or they can adjust status in the States. And if they adjust status in the States, they can do a follow to join process for the family, right? So that becomes a very possible way to handle it.
And I tell people this all the time. I mean, I am not going to encourage someone to apply for a B1, B2 and try to dupe the consular officer. If you really do, if you want to come in for a visit and you have DV, you can do that. That's what I would say. We don't have to make our decisions and keep them, right? So our intent can change.
Right.
Or, I really do want to visit the United States because if I get the diversity visa, I need to know where I want to live. That's totally reasonable. I would actually, do I want to live in Florida or California? Do I want to live in Massachusetts? How cold is it in Vermont? Because that's where I may settle. Those things to me make a lot of sense, but I don't want to have someone, don't try to pull a fast one on a consular officer.
Don't lie.
Yeah, don't lie.
Don't lie.
Yeah, don't lie.
Don't be
Yeah.
tricky. Yeah. I think, people don't really understand that, particularly from some areas of the world where perhaps being a bit creative in the stories that people give is kind of more common. But yeah, the worst feeling in the world for a consular officer must be, hey, this guy is lying to me. I mean, he's trying to tell me what I want to hear, and I don't like this, right? And so the reaction can easily be a refusal, where basically someone talks themselves into a refusal because they come across as dishonest.
And that's a good way to get yourself,
horrible.
barred.
Yeah, and the DV interviews, based on the interview experiences I've read and heard from people, that honesty factor plays a lot into it. The consular officer has some discretion in some of the decisions they make. And so they it's a lot of it is how someone comes across. Do they fit, are they being honest? Are they straightforward? Do they have good prospects in the States? Those sorts of things. And someone, as you say, that has taken the time to take a trip to America to figure out whether they're going to be happier in New York or Florida or California or wherever, or Alabama, maybe. It could be. That's a very good story to give.
I talk to consular officers all the time, and what people don't always appreciate, or maybe until they go, or if they've gone before, you really do have 2 to 10 minutes total.
Yeah.
And that person is not really going to review your file before or just before, depending, because embassies and consulates are extremely busy trying to process as many applications as possible. So you have 2 to 10 minutes to go there face to face at a window. It's sometimes it's noisy, it's messy. You're going, yes, sometimes you want to bring documents, but oftentimes they're not going to look at them, and they're not going to take a lawyer letter and read it, or a letter from you and read about, they're going to look you in the eye and say, okay, first blush, what is the reaction? And then say, ask you a couple questions. I mean, I know for like students, and I know sometimes people who win the diversity visa are former students. I mean, for students, I know lawyers that recommend, wear the college sweater that you're going to. Know a little bit about the college you're going to.
Right.
Because if you don't, that could be the first question. And if they say, well, why did you choose Rochester Institute of Technology? And the person says, I have no idea. I don't even know what Rochester is. Like, I think that you're not going to help yourself. I mean, we, the United States, are being extremely selective about who we let in. Okay. Yeah. That has not changed since 2017. I think that student visas are denied at 40% at this point. I think diversity visas, I don't know what the denial rate or the refusal rate, but
at 15%.
15%. Admin processing, though, is also something we want to avoid. Don't go there and give them a reason. If they ask you about your military experience, assume that they know that you've served in the military. If they ask you a specific question, assume that they know something. Answer it honestly, because admin processing is, with a diversity visa application, very difficult. I mean,
they say about 2,300 people have remained in 221G administrative processing at the end of the program. They run out of time.
For 25 and 26, is Russia and Iran, they're eligible? Are they eligible? Because Russian and Iranian applicants just across the world right now. I mean, Chinese nationals as well, but those 3 nationalities, I mean, those are an automatic admin processing. I try to tell people, so from Iran, particularly for male candidates from Iran, there's going to be a 221G processing, admin processing, and typically it's taking 4 to 5 months for that processing. So for people that interview from Iran, and they interview in any country in the world, if they're interviewing in sort of June, July, they're already up against the timelines where they could just run out of time. Russia is getting a lot of TAL stuff, technology stuff. So if you're a technologist, if you're in IT or that sort of thing from Russia, you stand a very high chance of getting administrative processing. We're starting to see in the last 6 months, Russian nationals. I mean, I'm talking about people who've been in the United States, maybe as an executive,
Right.
For years and not had an issue, now have an issue.
Right. Right.
And so we want to be careful and cognizant of that. Yeah, there's definitely the science-based
Right.
thing.
Let's talk about AOS then.
Okay.
So AOS, adjustment of status, right? So you've got consular processing, which is processing through the embassies in the home countries or whichever countries the people live in right now. And then you've got adjustment of status for people who are living in the USA or on a non-immigrant visa in the USA. And they can adjust their status. There's a few rules though, right? What are some of the sort of key points about AOS?
Well, yeah, I mean, number one, you have to be here. You have to have paid the Department of State a fee to transfer your case over. If you just entered, you have to have the ability to explain why your intent changed. Like, I came in to visit Mickey Mouse, but now I've decided to complete adjustment of status, meaning I'm going to apply with USCIS. I think it's also more expensive to process your case by USCIS. But I mean, the experience we had after, you kind of name dropped and we took this route, I think, what was it? Maybe late July, early August of last year.
Early July of 24.
Yeah.
When the visa bulletin came out, and it shook everyone up in a sense. It shook the whole process up because the final visa bulletin came out, I think, July 9th or so.
Yeah.
And it made Africa current, which was ridiculous. It was a big increase for Asia and for Europe in particular.
Yeah.
Actually, there's an aspect of that I'd like to talk to you about, the region, the alphabet with the regions. But it suddenly gave a chance to people that didn't previously have a chance. In fact, let me just show you. I do want to show you this nice note that came across just this morning. It was from Emmeline, is her screen name that she puts on here, and she I think it's a she. She wants to thank you and Jesse for a DV24 follow-up. She was waiting for Stockholm. I think I had probably said, look, you better get on the phone to Jesse. And she spoke with you. You consulted with her. And for whatever reason, I think the idea you felt was better to stick with Stockholm, which was, I think people sort of misunderstand lawyers sometimes. Lawyers have got the reputation for always doing what's best for them. But in this case, you absolutely said, no, don't pay me, stay with Stockholm, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it worked out very nicely for this particular person. So
yeah,
they stopped by and said thank you for that. So,
and I told probably more people. We had a lot of, I talked to a lot of people. I probably told more people to stay. That she wasn't the older one. There was another one in London that I know got his interview like the day after we spoke, and he was ready to jump on a plane. But there were some people. There was a, let me give you an example. A person who was in the West Bank, Palestine.
Right.
That person was never going to get an interview, and he had a B1, B2, and we filed his case after he arrived in the United States within 1 week. And
so mid-July, he arrived in.
I think he arrived. No, because we kind of went back and forth because he saw your video. We had talked, and I said, "Geez," I said, we have this issue with, we have to be able to explain. I mean, there's a war, so I mean, you coming on your B1, B2 makes total sense to me. Right. You got to protect your safety. I just need to be able to. We have to be able to articulate that to the officer that, you can change your mind. And if you had come here and gotten a visa interview by chance, which was not going to happen, but let's say you did, maybe you would have went back. But you needed to take the heat off yourself and get here. He's single. We turned it around very quickly as AOS application. And this is what people need to understand. When you file for adjustment of status, you have to do your medical exam in the United States. Okay. We also have to wait for a receipt from the Department of State. And then we have to mail everything to USCIS, who will then take it in its like centralized location in Missouri, which is the middle of America. And then they spit it out to where your address is. The one lesson we learned is, well, we learned a couple, but the first one is this: USCIS, if you're current, you're in. They don't look and do a priority list or where you
No,
are.
exactly. Yes.
They just take it. The other thing is they absolutely will kill to process your application. They take it seriously. And so for this person, the officer called me, brought him in an interview the next, like in September, I don't know what it was, maybe 9th. But the one thing that we had an issue with in all 3 cases that we filed for in August, in all 3 cases, everybody has green cards today. But the one issue was they never kept track of the medicals. And so next time, what I would say is if we do this in August, we don't mail in medicals, you keep them, and then we bring them to the interview. Because when they never kept track of the medicals.
Right.
But so that person from the West Bank was processed in Detroit, and he went and he had to redo his medicals, but the officer stayed with him and approved. We had 2 people from Belarus who were in Canada who came in, went to North Carolina, got stuck at a hurricane, and their cases, because they were living in an Airbnb, their cases were, the address was really messed up, but they got transferred. They were in Massachusetts, and the officer didn't even interview them, but they had to bring their medicals. And then the last case was, they were here.
So on that North Carolina case, they didn't receive an interview, but they got approved anyway.
Yeah. The officer waived it. He called me. It was in Massachusetts because that's where I am.
Right.
He said, "Hey," he's like, it was September 23rd or something. And he said, "Listen, I can get these things done, and I need to get them done because it's a diversity visa case. I just don't have medicals for them." And my client, who is great and taking advantage of the opportunity, flew. He didn't even trust me to bring the medicals because I was like, "Just ship them to me and I'll walk them over. It's like 20 minutes from my house." And he flew in and handed them in person. And the last one, similar issue, Nashville, Tennessee, husband and wife, F1, F2 students applied in August, and we did everything. But the medicals were lost again, and they also had to come back. But the officer again called me and said, "Hey, I want to work on these. I want to do them. We are screaming against this deadline. Have them bring in the medicals." And chaos, anxiety, but it did, and they got their case approved. So the other thing is, in each case, and this is something that we learned, I don't often recommend, but it's maybe a good tip. Because the other thing, the part I left off is when you file, you get a receipt from USCIS, which can take 7 to 10 days. And then you'll get scheduled for biometrics, which are your fingerprints, okay? But your fingerprints appointment may not be in the time we have. In each one of the cases, we had the person walk into a service center and just say, "I'm a diversity visa applicant." And sometimes they had to wait. Sometimes they were processed right away.
Right.
But in one case, so, again, yes, I have a law firm, whatever. For me, I'll do your case. I'll refer you to a friend. It doesn't matter to me because I really don't like.
You're too nice, Jesse.
Soliciting cases. There was one woman though that I want to bring up because she was in Hollywood, California. She said, "I'm already done with my cases," and it was late, and she had like 3 derivatives. And I said, "You know what? You're sophisticated. You could do this yourself. Just to file it yourself." And because honestly, by the time you send it to me and I'm working on these other cases, like we don't have that time. Just file it with the California. So she did, and I kid you not, she filed it to like July 29th, and she wasn't current until August. And you know how you can file 1 month in advance. She got a denial, and
so that on the early processing policy, she wasn't actually filing early, right?
No, she was filing. You can file 1 month in advance, but the California office sent her denial notices. Of course, she's flipping out. She's emailing me like, "Hey, why, maybe I should have given you my cases. And I said, I'm just struggling. And she's emailing me. And I think it was on a weekend. And I'm going back with her. I'm like, damn it, that this is absolutely flat out wrong. And I said, listen, the best thing, I mean, she wants to pay me to do an appeal. And I said, like, listen, we're not going to do an appeal. You can pay me all you want. Like, it's not going to get turned around to save you. I said, there's one thing you can do. USCIS has been really good. There's this email address. It's a feedback email address. Send them this email. And I kind of helped her with it. I sent her the denials. I shit you not. I'm sorry. They reversed the denial and approved her and her family.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome.
And so
this balance between, so the experience in consular processing tends to be, and this is a bit of an unfair generalization, but there are a lot of people who are sort of mistreated, shall we say, during consular processing, and they have no appeal right. They have no sort of leg to stand on. Contrast that with AOS, where you have right of appeal. You are dealing with people in America who genuinely, they're probably surprised to see these DV cases. They don't see many of them at the field offices, and they seem genuinely keen to get them through. Did you know, Jesse, that I don't know whether you read this story, but there was one adjustment of status this year where everyone was coming up until the last minute in the deadline, and this person had contacted the field office on the final day, on the 30th, and they were saying, I've got to get through to the consular officer, and it's got to be done, by midnight tonight. They're at San Diego, and the consular officer was off for that day, was on PTO for that day, and so the applicant's like, okay, so I'm done then. There's no one who's going to approve my case, because they told her, no, there's no one else who can do this work. At like 8 to 9 that night, this is 5 minutes before midnight kind of thing. The consular officer actually got off their butt, working from home, and approved the case because they realized the deadline was about to be hit in Washington, D.C., right? And so they actually did do that at just about 9 o'clock at night. She got the new card being produced email.
Oh my goodness.
So I mean, there have been some amazing heroics in
I would say
DV as well.
I mean, I don't want to, again, how I feel about talking about other attorneys and the government. I don't want to criticize the government, but I will applaud USCIS because they are amazingly dedicated to diversity visa adjustment of status. I mean, you've made this point for years. I think I've seen it firsthand. They take the work seriously. They do not want to see a diversity visa applicant for adjustment of status not get a review. Right. And so they absolutely, to have officers, the experience, and I don't want to name drop, but I did happen to have a meeting with Orja Du who's the head of USCIS, and I told her. I actually told her we were on a Zoom together, and I said, your staff has been so amazing with diversity visa applicants, and she was very excited to hear that. And I said, I file a lot of different cases. I do most of my work in litigation, but I do file petitions here and again. And I said, to have 3 officers call me on the phone so that my clients got their medicals in so we could get this done before the deadline was amazing. And again, I think there are thousands of consular officers who take their work very seriously as well. But there is a different level of respect for people who are in the United States and people who are outside the United States. And that's across the board. People who are in the United States are going to get treated better by nature, almost of the law. It's just they have more rights. They
have rights, right?
They have rights.
They're on U.S. soil. They have rights. They can appeal. Whereas there's literally no formal appeal process on CP.
And you're right. Going back to that woman who received just a mistake. You weren't eligible. That and to have the ability to do something, but in the consular officer, it's really hard to get supervisory review. There's this thing called LegalNet, but and they do try to get everything right, but yeah, you're right. There's not a whole lot you can do with the State Department, and there are some embassies and consulates that you cannot contact. Like you don't even have that ability.
Yeah, exactly. And they change year to year. Some have been amazing. I have to say, there's a sort of a story, not a story, there's a reality. In DV 2022, this was immediately after the lawsuits of 2020-21. In DV 22, the government suddenly got interested in issuing all of the DV visas. And they sent 2 NLs, like scheduled interviews, up to September 29th of DV 2022, right? September 29th. They set some up for Mumbai. They set up about, I think it was about sort of 7 or 8 in Mumbai, and for the 30th. And what the consulate did was they arranged a tame physician to line everyone up that had just got their interview. They had the physician waiting. They got the reports done. They did the vaccinations and everything else. They got the interviews done, and they were still issuing visas at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night local time. And in fact, I think even later than that, 10:30. Someone believes that they issued visas after midnight local time, but actually that wasn't the case. It was all done by about 10:30. But still an amazing process that got about 4 or 5 families through, which was, there are some good stories from.
We had our Suva there was taking.
Suva's been amazing, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's hard for people to understand, that it's not equal. And it does change year to year. I mean, South Africa was great, then it wasn't great. Egypt, I guess, had been great for years, and then all of a sudden they stopped.
Yeah.
Abu Dhabi,
Abu Dhabi's a weird one. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't explain it. I do a lot of consular work, non-DV consular work, and sometimes it's, a new chief of mission will come in, things change.
Right.
I mean, it's just, you can't, or they do a rotation in the summer and, or they lose one officer. They'll lose the one officer who was trained to do diversity visas. And now all of a sudden they don't do them. The queue's in the backlog. So it's hard to explain.
Yeah. Very strange. Yeah, I mean, that's very much the case with Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi has been a tremendous consulate, and they've even done sort of public Zoom meetings and Facebook interviews, etc., where a couple of the consular officers were talking through the process and giving people useful tips. And so I'm thinking, this is great. There's a couple of consular officers there that really want to do their stuff, and then all of a sudden, I think it was in 24 this year, they just suddenly stopped taking interviews in July. Just stopped and ignored everyone from that point forward. It's like, oh man, how can they do that? And Nairobi turning around the other direction, becoming, from one of the worst and most powerful consulates that we knew had capacity but wouldn't use it, to 24 performance where they put the pedal to the metal. They issued up to 122,000, case number 122,000 and something.
Wow. Were they taking cases from people from other?
Yeah, loads of cases. I had gone online in, I think, about January. I'd recognized the performance in Nairobi was improving. Yeah. And I'd gone online and said, hey, if you're from some of the other embassies around like Addis and whatever else, you probably should transfer to Nairobi because they seem to be doing well. It was. I don't normally sort of interfere or sort of. I don't try and attack an embassy or anything else, but I got a group of people from Nairobi, from Kenya, who wrote to KCC about me saying that Brit Simon has gone online telling people to move from all these other countries, and that's ruining our chances. And you, Mr. KCC, must must attack Brit Simon or whatever. Which I don't work for KCC, so I mean, I'm not scared of KCC. It's got nothing to do with me what they think. But it was just, I was just trying to help a few more people. And in fact, Nairobi did an amazing job even with all the extra people that came in.
Well, I'll tell you, we need it, and they should be celebrated because Africa continues to be. I mean, yes, there's crisis and civil strife, and but it's just a very hard place. I do a lot of cases in Nigeria for adopted children and parents, and oh my goodness, it is just a struggle. And I know Addis. Oh my goodness, I mean,
Addis,
it's just unbelievable. It's just, I
Accra is
mean,
awful.
honestly,
Ankara.
yeah,
Ankara is doing my head
I
in.
just wish we could recognize there's an issue and tell individuals right from the jump that probably going to have to look to go somewhere else if you want to
That's
handle
exactly what I am doing. So
Yeah.
if you're in Accra, get the hell out of there. If you're in Ankara, get the hell out of there, because they're not going to take care of you. There is a new FAM policy. There's a new policy described in FAM, which allows you to move based on physical presence in the country. But KCC are not really respecting or encouraging that 100%. They're not really helping with that. And the embassies are sort of learning that new policy, and sort of some are working with the new policy, some are not. Ultimately, they don't want people to move around. But if KCC think it's okay that if you happen to be in Accra, Ghana, and your case number are 12,000 out of 100,000 in Africa, and your case number 12,000, and they think it's okay, you're going to lose your chance because Accra won't schedule more than 20 people a month. It drives me nuts. I don't know how they can take that position, but
I mean, especially for people, there's a lot of, I mean, I know that EU is pretty good by and large, but I mean, if you take the winter months in Bern, Switzerland, that's a great, get your DV. I mean, just transfer.
The problem for Turks and people at Accra, and there's some Iranians too, is often they can't get the Schengen visa, so they can't travel to more cooperative embassies.
Turkey is just a problem. It's a massive problem across the board. They don't have the capacity to handle. They've been asked to do a lot. They don't really. I can't consider that they're friendly with the applicants. It's a lot, it's tough to get there, and they put a lot of people in admin processing. I agree. It's just, it's like Frankfurt, Germany, or Warsaw, they've been asked to do a ton to take on the burden of Ukraine and some of the, problems. And it's just,
they're doing something in Frankfurt. They're taking, Frankfurt has become the centralized processing for all immigrant visas for a number of countries now, not just the Ukraine and Russia situation, but they're now taking, I think it's Serbia and several other countries now are all going to Frankfurt. So I hope they're gearing up properly in Frankfurt to handle that extra capacity.
Yeah, they certainly have skilled officers there. That's a huge hub. It's like Mumbai in a way, where by and large the level of talent and experience of the officers is higher. But again, we live in a world where the State Department remains very much a mystery. And as soon as you say London does it this way, they don't.
Right.
I mean, and so I find it very hard to give a forecast of an embassy or priorities of the embassy. It's like, it has been this way, but if you're seeing something else, they may have made a different. They may have changed paths here. I don't know. Yeah.
So Jesse, just to bring us back for the last few minutes or so, so the general advice would be, with the Trump administration possibly coming back, if that happens, adjustment of status is, probably a viable path. I don't think people have understood perhaps the speed at which it can be done. Just to reiterate, you filed 3 cases, was it in August?
Yeah.
And all were approved in time. So, actually, people that become current in September of a DV lottery year that see their visa bulletin number, become available, they will see that in the visa bulletin published in July. And the minute that visa bulletin is published, people can file because of the early filing policy. And there is enough time to get the DV cases through because for some reason, USCIS, as you say, take DV cases very seriously and fast track them without even being paid to go on the fast track.
To be honest, it was shocking, and I think I was, I do believe that, the people I told to stay had a valid reason for staying, and I think almost all of them had their 2NL issued. But for the people in the U.S., I was, I have to be cautious and say we can do it. We can do it. I didn't think we'd go 3 for 3, and then if you take in the California case, 4 for 4. No, I mean, I just think it's an incredible opportunity for USC, for people to work with USCIS instead of the State Department, and and we've already filed one for 2025, who had a low number, but I told them they were on their student visas. They actually reached out to me a long time ago, and they weren't taking any chances. We filed October 1. And if I'm in this, if I'm current right now and I'm in the United States, I'm absolutely 100% filing.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because, as you know, every month brings on a new level of anxiety. And like I said, we can't, there's a lot that can happen in the world that can change processing. By and large, if you're in the U.S., you're going to get your case adjudicated, which is the best we can offer.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like a slower option, but I don't think it is a slower option. I did adjustment of status on my DV case in 2014, and whilst they frustrated me at the time, they pushed me back in timeline, kind of thing. It was very clear they wanted to do my case. I mean, they wanted to approve it.
It's absolutely apparent to me that they'll clear the backlog.
Yes, exactly.
You can't file. I mean, we haven't tried filing in September yet, but I mean, they were going above. I mean, to have a consular officer, a USCIS officer call on the phone is unheard of. I mean, that is, and to their credit. And what's funny, I mean, I told the officer, I was like, listen, you are amazing. Thank you. He's like, well, we're told that these are the most important cases. We have to do them.
That's awesome.
So
I do want to caution people. So I've just, over the last week or so, I've been hearing from someone who did an adjustment to status. They did it themselves. And there's a lot of people who can file the adjustment to status case themselves. They don't necessarily need a lawyer. And in many cases, they should probably do that. But if you're not really on the ball and you don't understand the realities of when the deadline comes down, etc., it can be a problem. I received a note from someone who applied. I think they filed their case in August, and it's just gone missing. Like the whole thing just went missing. And because they are filing for themselves, they had no idea how to sort of shake the tree, as it were, and force things ahead. And they just lost their chance. I mean, and so whilst filing for yourself might save you some money, and it's good for a lot of people, and there's always someone's mum who is absolutely amazing at these cases, helping these cases. She's a person similar to me, just helping people, on a free basis. Whilst all that information is out there, and she's amazing and everything else, if you're not a legal professional, you don't have the same options to sort of contact, who to contact, etc. Some of the field offices, you can shake some of the trees. I'm sure that's an advantage of using a legal professional.
Yeah, I mean, I think, by and large, I mean, take the case out there in California. I'm not saying they did it because she didn't have an attorney and make that kind of human error, but it's shocking that they would make that mistake. I don't know if they would make it with an attorney filing. I think they just you're always going to get a little bit more respect. But yeah, it does cost. I mean, just so people are aware, I mean, you're talking about a legal fee that is going to be around $4,000 to $5,000 to have your case handled, to get the documents you need, get the translations you need, make sure your medical is there and sealed, file it in the right place, file it with the right fees. Children pay less; they pay $950. You adults pay for $1,440. Getting the receipt from the Department of State, because you have to pay them, and there's a way, and you have to get a return envelope when you send it. There's all these little instructions that, right? I mean, if you want, it's kind of like me. Could I change the oil in my car? Well, actually, I couldn't. But let's say I thought I could. Like my brother-in-law changes his own oil in his car. He doesn't need to do it. He just does it. I don't know why, but like, let's say you can do it yourself, maybe. But for me, I'd be like, I would probably like, no, there's no way I can do that, right?
It's a big thing. Also, changing the oil in your car, it's something you do every few thousand miles. Fine, okay. If you get it wrong this time, you can take it to Jiffy Lube.
Yeah.
The DV AOS process is kind of a one-time shot. You got one time to get it right for a green card that's going to alter your life.
Yeah,
Is it worth the
right.
$5,000 or whatever? Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah, I
know at
mean,
least one person
everyone
who's out there
everyone
thinking
has
it's worth it.
different financial. I mean,
Yeah.
I try to do the best I can. I think, but what I tell people too is I say, listen, start the form, start the instructions. If you get stuck, God willing, I'm not going anywhere. You call me. I mean, I don't, I'm not chasing down work that type of way. I'm trying
No.
the DV stuff for me, when I got involved like with you back in 2019, 2020, I didn't have any, I mean, I just, the heartache it causes people and the good work that you do to help people and the community that was created out of crisis was amazing. And you should be, you are the axe when it comes to this, and people should never in a million years think about criticizing you. I mean, it's almost like you just get to shepherd people for 1 year, but for people who could see your body of work over the years, you really should. I don't know if there's like, I don't know what we can do for you, but make a little statue of outside the State Department for you, because really, it's an extremely complicated part of the law, and that bringing it full circle to 2020 and how we had to educate Judge Mehta and some of the other judges. I mean, it's written in a way that is almost meant to confuse.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's hard.
But you must have I do this for fun. I do this as a hobby. I don't do it for a living. But I do sometimes sit and think about, and I get messages from people almost every live I go on. There's someone who comes in and says, "Hey, DV 2020 here. I'm here in America enjoying my life." Something like that, and it makes me very happy. And I know I've touched thousands of people's lives, and it's wonderful. You must have the same thing. I mean, how many people have because of the work you do, how many, literally thousands of people over the last few years have benefited, whether they know it or not, they benefited from the work you did. So
I mean, I think all immigration attorneys, we that's why we do it. I think for those of us, I mean, there are some of us, we have to self-police a little better, and we're trying to do that because there are some people who see people who are vulnerable and help them. But no, I mean, I've started to do, I went from DV and taking that kind of pain, trying to heal that. I do a lot of adoption cases now. I do a lot of trafficking cases. I think I'm just a glutton for punishment. I do, but I think, not to say I won't take the company cases and, and I want to do well for myself and earn, but the ability to make an impact in someone's lives, and to take a denial and make it an approval, using the federal courts to do that it's an amazing opportunity for me, and it keeps me going. Our immigration system is obviously a work in progress, and we have a lot. No matter who wins in November, I mean, we have so much work to do that. It's just
let's hope I've made my feelings clear about which administration I would rather see, and it's not that. It's not that the Harris administration, if we get to that, would be that much better. I'm sure she's going to be tough on immigration. The country as a whole has been led to believe that we've got all these problems, and unfortunately, they've scapegoated the immigrant community that they've described as illegal immigrants when they're often very, very much not illegal. But it's a scapegoating, and it has created a sort of an atmosphere of unfriendliness towards immigrants, which is not what America's about.
I think we've made a mistake. I mean, the problem with immigration law is people don't learn it before they start talking about it. And so for me, I don't know a ton about soccer, so I would keep my mouth shut if I were watching a soccer match in Rio. But like, for everyone's an immigration expert and they don't know the damn thing about immigration. I actually heard Walz accurately describe TPS the other day, and I was shocked because he actually knew what he was talking about. But for most elected leaders, they have no idea, and yet and I think we've made a lot of mistakes. I think people don't understand that those who do it the right way, and I include those seeking asylum in the United States because that is lawful. For those doing it the right way, like our diversity visa applicants, U.S. citizens who adopt parents from abroad, people who come in on a work visa, those are not takers, those are makers. And
Right.
we we have spent, I mean, look at you, man. I mean, I know you do really well, and I know you have a great job and you have a great family. I mean, seriously, are you eating cats and dogs? I don't think so. I mean,
Well, some people might believe I'm eating a few too many.
I just think
protein
like
meals.
this narrative of making it a racial or nationality or this type of that is not immigration, and it could go. It's the same rhetoric they used to use many years ago in New England when
The Italians, the Irish,
were coming. It's been proven wrong time and again, but you know what? We need to learn from history, and when people espouse hate, we need to. I mean, it's part of human nature, and people will buy it and suck it up because they want to blame other people. But you know what? I mean, we need to keep the right to vote for as long as possible, and hopefully, again, I don't. I think immigration is a massive issue. I think we have a massive problem. I'm not so sure I agree with how Biden did. I think he did make a mistake by letting a number of people come in and not really focusing on the people who were waiting to come in the right way. I think that pissed off a lot of people, including some people who were in that line or who had family members in that line. I think they need to own that mistake. I think they're trying to do it through enforcement right now. But the other side, I mean, listen, I tell people this all the day. I worked in law enforcement for 13 years at the Department of Justice. I never say never, but this whole thing, like, oh, we're just going to start taking and shipping them back, like,
Right.
That's just not even going to happen.
It's not even real. No, it's not even real. It's just it's meat for
And you know what? The economy would crash.
Yeah, exactly.
Because our economy is built on the hard work that foreign nationals and immigrants are doing,
Right.
along with American workers. Like, we're all kind of rowing in the same direction.
Right.
And
Americans they're not worried that there's immigrants coming across the border to pick fruit, because Americans are not lining up for those jobs, and immigrants typically take a hard work and a positive attitude towards making a new life, and if they have to do hard work to start with or whatever, they'll do that and they'll build a better life for themselves.
I mean, I can't tell you how many people. I live in New England, right outside of Boston. There's a large Brazilian community and there's a large Haitian community. And I've never heard anyone complain about those people not wanting to work. They kick their ass every day working, and they make great lives for themselves and their children.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the way it is. And you know what? What people don't understand is this. And this goes for any foreign national, but it's not about where you were born once you get here. It's about what you do when you're here. You can have a great life where you can commit crimes just like anybody else, and if you do, you shouldn't stay here. Until you're a citizen, we can get rid of you. The citizens we have that commit crimes have to stay in an institution. But I think what people don't understand is the United States still provides an amazing opportunity for people who want to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And that should be the message coming from our leaders, especially those. People in Congress. Oh my God, they don't even want to help. They want to run on immigration issues so they don't solve them, so they can keep getting dollars in their pocket.
Yeah.
Nobody's working on a fix. Do
you not feel legislation will be changed dramatically? Because people often ask, and I think there's even a question here. Is there a chance that Trump cancels the lottery? In reality, to cancel the lottery from a legal point of view would require legislation, and there just doesn't seem to be any power to get any changes through from a legislative.
If he were to have both if he were to have the votes, Senate, Congress, Congress goes this way, the House goes this way, he'd sign that bill, but they have to pass the bill, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think they can get, unless there's a massive shift towards Republican in the House.
And that's kind of the other thing, right? So it's how, let's talk about, let's say they wanted to drive it up to 100,000 diversity visas. Do we have the votes for that? I don't, even if it's a Harris-Walz administration, I don't think we have the votes the other way. We can't even pass reform for people like DACA who are literally going to retire and be the children.
They're going to be dreamers.
Yeah, dreamers. They're going to dream. They're going to seriously die. I mean, they're going to retire here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Afghan Adjustment Act for people who helped us in the wars in Afghanistan, can't even get green cards yet. There's so many easy things that we haven't been able to accomplish that we start talking about the hard stuff. What do we do with people who are in the United States, don't have status, been here for 20 years? What do we do with them? I mean, I know what I would do with them. And I know, but the reality is people have made so much money on not solving the problem that, I mean, I don't know if they really want to.
Right, exactly. Jesse, last topic, if I may, just want to talk a little bit about what happens after DV lottery for people that want to reunite with their families and that sort of thing, to bring the families. There's quite a long timeline to bring relatives. So people often ask me, for example, if they can't afford the full costs of bringing everyone on the DV process, can the dad come to America, save up some money, and then bring the family later, the kids and the spouse? I draw people a very sort of clear picture that is going to mean separating the family for years, because bringing the family on I-130 process or whatever is going to be much, much slower than DV. Is that likely to change? Is there any improvement possible there?
No, I mean, because you have to deal, in the normal case, you're dealing now with USCIS, who has to take a visa petition and classify your relatives as your relatives. And that's going to take, for a green card holder, for spouse and unmarried children, that's going to be 12 months at least. And those processing times have not come down. But those are typical. And then we have to ship it to our friends in New Hampshire at the National Visa Center, who then, from that point, you make your application, your visa application, then you have to have an embassy interview. So it's really kind of a 3-step process. Sometimes they would say 2, but I would say 3, because you take your USCIS application, you say, this is my spouse, for example. I'm a green card holder now, DV's over. I got my green card, I want my spouse. Okay, file with USCIS, 12 months you'd be happy with that. Goes to the National Visa Center at New Hampshire. We have to now open a case for you, for your spouse who's in London. You have to fill out some information there. Then you have to make, then you do your DS-260, and then you have to get your interview and have a visa issued, come into the United States. I mean, that whole process, 2 years is probably what I would say guesstimate. Yeah. And if you're in certain parts of the world where admin processing is like routine, it could be longer than that.
Yeah. And for siblings or parents,
siblings is 20 years. Siblings is 20 years.
20 years.
For married children, talking 12 to 15 years. And you have to, usually you have to obtain your citizenship. It's an amazing challenge. I would tell you, for a lot of people who don't understand that there's non-immigrant visa options available that may, because you are educated and you are working a great job in tech, come on, or you are extraordinary in your own right. There's visas for that. There's an O visa if you have extraordinary ability. There's an L visa if you are an executive or manager and you can come to work in the US for a subsidiary of your company. There's an H-1B visa, which again it's the only other lottery we have. Yeah.
I won that lottery in the same year we won I got the H1 visa and the lottery visa both at the same time.
You should have played the California lottery then.
Yeah.
You would have won all three.
We came in February of 14 on the H1, having won the lottery on that. And we were immediately filing for adjustment of status.
I mean, I will say though that if you apply for adjustment of status and you're the principal here, and let's say you adjust status in July, you don't have to follow that process. You can follow to join. There's a follow to join process where you just alert the embassy and they can get your family members, spouses, children, visas in that year, but it has to be within the September 30th deadline.
Yeah.
So
I think, Jesse, if you don't mind, like if Trump wins in November, I think I'd like to maybe have another session with you and try and sort of formulate some strategies that people can follow.
I hope I don't talk to you. No, I'm just kidding.
Let's hope we don't have to have that conversation.
I mean,
do that in November.
I think for those, this is what this is kind of my message to all the clients and people I talk to. Like, what can you do now? Well, if you're current now and you're in the United States, think about adjustment of status. Think about filing before November, or at least before January, if you can. If you're in one of those countries where the interviews for everyone are not great, think about transferring. There are things we can do to prepare now. And if if you're a doctor, try to get a job in the United States too. Maybe don't just rest on the DV possibility, because as we know, just because you're selected doesn't mean you get a visa, right? We have to start there. As much as we don't like it, that's the reality. And about the turn of the year, Simon's going to get all these, everything's going to be like, hey, tell me when I'm going to get an interview. Hey, tell me how many interviews are going to be next month. And he's going to tell you that he doesn't have a crystal ball. And so we should save him from having to answer that question that'll
stop all the questions. Sure.
Oh my God. I know. And then like the Telegram groups, I've just, oh my God. And it stinks because people are anxious and they cannot
get started.
And there's so much misinformation, right? And then we have the data
misinformation. I usually get grumpy about misinformation, and people don't understand why. But misinformation, a little bit of misinformation here and a little bit more here, and all of a sudden you've got a rumor created, and it takes years to die. Years. I'm dealing with some today that some people started years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, and I told a lot of people this when even the comment you brought up from the woman over there in Europe, and I go to them all the time and I say, you know what? My true answer is I don't know.
Right.
But my best answer for you, if I were in your shoes, would be to stay and wait. I wouldn't come in if I were you, or if you were my sister, this is what I would do. That's usually the best I can do, because we have to embrace the fact that it's uncertain, and we cannot know that you're going to get a 2-L or you're not going to get a 2-L. I mean, and we have to take what we do know. Like, I know that there are certain embassies who stink. I know that if you're a Russian or Iranian, you're going to be in admin processing right now. Those are things I know.
Yeah.
But when or how many interviews London's going to take in February, I have no idea.
Right. It used to be absolutely predictable. You could set your watch by it. Like if you went up to about 2018, 2019 started getting a bit wacky. They introduced new procedures, but 2018 up to then, if you were current at this point, we would just work out, okay, when will your number be current? It'll be current in next month or the month after, and you will get your 2-L about 5 days later or a week later. And it worked like that, 100%. There was none of this backlog nonsense. Backlogs didn't exist in those days. There was no, maybe your embassy won't have capacity, and so you'll wait for another 3 months without knowing what's going on. It didn't exist. Yeah. I'm looking forward to the days when that comes back, when you can just have all the embassies behaving nicely.
There's certainly a lot of progress. I mean, I can tell you, and this is kind of, it was so hard. I mean, just to give maybe the Biden administration a little credit, it took them 2.5 years to get their shit together, really.
Yeah.
And they made some mistakes, and that's fine. But really the when you break an already broken system and you split it into a million pieces and you say, well, okay, the first step we had to do is put it back together.
Right.
And then we had that, those great years for diversity visa, but we haven't solved it completely where we have an equality of opportunity. Maybe we're not going to have that, but I do know that there's a lot of progress to work with Africa. And I don't know what the right fixes are for the DV program. I would obviously like to see it, the cap raised, just because it's probably, one of the best ideas that we ever came up with in terms of a country, in terms of like American values, taking people from places that we don't get a lot of immigration from and inviting them to come join us. That theory, that idea is an American idea that I love. But you know what? We haven't really, the population of the world has increased and we've never increased this number.
Right.
So, again, I'm not running for office here, but what I would say is how I was asked is like, let's take the number up because it's an amazing program. And you know what? The people who come in embrace that opportunity and do amazing things.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you're a shining example of that. I mean,
I was a derivative.
yeah. But the other thing too is it actually is a good example, to prove that, we're not taking things from other people. We're creating. I mean, a lot of people come in, and they create amazing businesses that employ American workers. And the thing is too, and this is why I get so frustrated with some of the rhetoric. It's like, nobody said you didn't have to compete if you were born in the United States. Like, that it's an American ideal that you don't get anything that you don't work hard for. And so this whole idea is like, oh, they're going to take our jobs. Like, dude, why don't you just work harder? Like, what are you afraid of? So if they come in and take your job, maybe you suck at your job.
Maybe you should look at yourself, not them. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. This whole finger pointing to me doesn't jive with what I read in about the American Revolution.
Right.
But again, I hope we have an amazing 2025 DV season. Hopefully we've shined a light on adjustment of status and the opportunity that those who are either here or can get here have. It does give you a little bit more certainty, I think, than the process abroad. Right. I know I'm going to have, and I'm going to sit on a perch and just watch your interactions on Twitter and kind of sit and just, sometimes I watch your videos. I just kind of swoop in and just see what kind of.
If I ever see a question from you, I'll be more happy to answer it.
I know.
Okay, let's wrap up. I do want to just sort of flash up your contact details, if I may. So the contact us. So your website, best website to contact you through, right, is bestlitigation.com.
Yeah, there's like a chat thing that people usually use, and they can do. It's good. I mean, I answer that, by the way. I know there's like a bot that will say, "What are you asking for?" But then it's usually it's all me. I mean, and I'm absolutely blessed with 2 staff members who are paralegals who they don't do the chat because they don't want to. But it's me, and to be honest, I just tell people, just as a warning, there's not a whole lot I can do for you through the chat. Obviously, it's like Telegram. It's like legal advice over Telegram. I feel like I'm like it's actually unethical. I mean, I really shouldn't do it. But if you wanna meet and say, hey, I may have this problem, I can usually answer a specific question. But you can sign up for a consult. Yes, I charge. The reason I charge is because I would be on the phone for all day, and
you should also really only be giving advice to people that have some sort of client relationship, right?
Yeah. It starts that relationship and confidentiality, and But again, if it's a simple question like, do I need an attorney for X? Like, I didn't disclose my spouse on the registration. I would say don't pay me. You know, things like that, right?
I would say, yeah, stop.
Yeah,
The only option people like that have got is to lie and dig a very big hole.
we don't
Of,
want to do that.
very,
Yeah.
very bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you know, I'm here. I mean, again, yes, I'm an attorney. It's what I do. Happy to help anyone who has a family member or anyone in need. I mean, again, there's a lot of them. I try to be as best as I can be, but
Well,
you
thanks,
know,
Jesse. And you know, there are other great lawyers too, as you mentioned earlier. You know, Chuck and Co. and Curtis and Co. Curtis has got his own law firm now, as opposed to
I think
with
he's
Raphael.
he's the Red Eagle.
Red Eagle Law, I think it is. Yeah. And then Chuck and Co. are they formed a sort of a cooperative group of independent.
Yeah, and I actually belong to that now that I'm in private. So, but yeah, Chuck still has his. He's Cook and Basker. There's Siskin Susser, and then there's Hall and Joseph, and you know there's a lot of people who are there. I mean, I think
there's a lot of good ones.
Yeah, and with like anything in DV world, you know, I always tell people focus on what you can control. You know, do your DS 260. Take your time. Make sure the answers are correct. You don't want to have to reopen and change things. You know, Charlene. Oh my God, Charlene's a client. You know, I will tell you that it takes a lot of your anxiety, not completely away, when you feel like you are taking control of your own case. So your DS 260 are things that you can do well, right? If you can transfer, study about it, learn about it. Simon has there's plenty of materials on how you actually go about transferring your case. Consider it. Other visa options, look into it. Spending your time on Telegram yelling at other people is probably not going to be helpful for your own anxiety.
It's so much fun.
It is so much fun. I know. It probably is. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. No,
but there are more productive ways to spend time. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, the common mistakes too. Like people need to make
people
sure
make the same mistakes every year.
Education. I mean, what was the Somali education problems, right? Like. You know, but people were submitting the same documents that were getting rejected time and time again. Like, get different documents. If they're not going to work, they're not going to work. And even if the embassy's wrong, if they're asking for a document that you can get, go get it. Like, don't fight. Right.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to learn from others' mistakes. You know, the DV lottery entry period is open right now, and I wish people would. There should be a button to, one of my videos on how to fill out the bloody form, because it's only like 15 questions, but people get wrong all the time. They put the wrong marital status. They mess up the country of eligibility or their birth country. They forget to add the kids, and all these things can be fatal mistakes.
They don't, and it's unforgivable.
Yeah, no, there's no way to approve the case. If you leave off your spouse that should have been on there, or if you leave off one of the kids because they were away at school and you couldn't get a photo of them, that's it. You're done. There is no way to approve that case.
You can definitely screw up your DS 260 and make corrections.
Right. People have to correct
that registration form.
Yeah, can't correct it. Can't even see it.
You have to take it serious.
Yeah, exactly. It's only a 10-minute form, but it can change your life, and you just need to do it the right way. But anyway, that's happening right now. All right, Jesse, let's call it a day. But I appreciate your time so much. It's lovely to speak to you again.
Oh my goodness, this was such fun.
Trip down memory lane for you and I.
Yeah. I everything's good with you?
Yeah, fantastic. I'm just waiting to, thinking about retirement and trying to decide where to go, what to do, and that sort of thing. But
before you open the Simon Diversity Visa Center, and
people often ask me, will I go in and try and become a lawyer or something? But I mean, absolutely not. The last thing I want is another job after the job I've just done for the last 30-40 years. But I'll continue what I'm doing in DV world, and I love that. And my family, thank goodness, are very very kind about letting me spend some of that time that I have, taking it away from them to spend it on DV. So I'm sort of 12 years in. I'll probably do another 12 years of stuff. We'll see.
The videos will live on forever, I'm sure.
The videos will, yeah, even if I don't. All right, Jesse. Okay.
Keep well. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye now. Thanks all. Subscribe and like. Cheers. Bye-bye.